When Robert Parker developed his point scale, 100 points were only reserved for a few wines that were better than extraordinary, wines that represented perfection. In the heyday of Robert Parker's influence, a 100-point score could either bring an unknown producer into the spotlight or raise the demand for a well-known wine into the stratosphere. I want to share this nice little story by the wine writer Mark Squires from the beginning of the Parker era that highlights his influence. He wanted to buy some of the 1985 Grosse Reserve and called up the winemaker, and this is what happened. The somewhat exasperated reply was that it had been just released and was already sold out. Huh? He said. You haven't heard? I wondered what it was I was supposed to have heard. Evidently, some guy named Robert Parker had just given it the first 100-point score ever for a California wine. It vanished in an eye blink, leaving Grosse besieged with eager collectors. I remember well that when I worked with fine wine in London, the price for the 2008 Lafite almost tripled within a few days after Robert Parker released his 98 to 100 point score. The wine hadn't changed a bit, it was just his score that caused demand to soar. You keep asking me in the comments for my 100-point wines. The truth is there aren't so many. One of them is the 1863 Burmester Coleta that I've tasted on this channel. But today I have 4 wines that were rated 100 points by robertparker.com. So let's see whether I'll find perfection in one of those bottles. Let's go. Before we get into the wines, let me first thank the sponsor of this video, Babel. I travel to many countries and winemaking regions all around the world, and being able to speak the languages is key in order to get as much information as possible out of the people you meet. Babel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and this is why I used Babel to learn Spanish before my trip to Ribera del Duero in Spain a few weeks ago. The app is easy to use, super intuitive, and I quickly learned a few sentences that helped me interact with people that I met along the wine route. Like for example, hola, mi nombre es Constantin, and ¿dónde está el vino? Well, I'm still learning. However, Babel makes the process fun and easy to integrate into my schedule. It just asked me a few questions at the beginning when I set up the app, and then it tailored the lessons according to my level of knowledge, which was pretty basic. So download the app and sign up to Babel using the link in the description to get 60% off of your subscription. So gracias to Babel, and now let's taste those wines. So let's start off with the 2020 Domane Serrig Vogelsang Grosse Lage. It's a Riesling and it received 100 points by Robert Parker. Stefan Reinhardt, the critic for Robert Parker when it comes to German wines, wrote, "The 2020 Vogelsang Grosse Lage is pure, deep and intense on the spectacularly fine mineral and absolutely unique nose that reveals concentrated but elegant and spicy mineral fruit with a coolish and herbal terroir expression, a show-stopping nose." The winery was built in 1904 by Kaiser Wilhelm II. This was the time when Mosel wine was the rage. Everyone wanted some Mosel wine, and the wines retailed for more than the best wines from Bordeaux, Burgundy and Champagne. This obviously changed after the beginning of the 20th century, when German producers were more focused on producing quantity rather than quality. But nowadays, there's again some really great wine coming out of the Mosel, and the prices are still kind of affordable. The winery was purchased by Markus Molitor, one of the most famous producers in the region. He refurbished it, and now they are focused on Riesling, producing 2 different styles of Riesling. The wine is sold through La Place de Bordeaux, which is the distribution system in Bordeaux, and it's mainly used for really high-end wines. So let's find out whether this is really high-end. The Vogelsang vineyard is a very steep slope. The vines grow on reddish slate and the grapes are pressed in a basket press to allow for a little bit of maceration. The wine is then aged in 3,000 liter Stockinger barrels for 10 months, and it's then aged for another 2 years in bottles, so it's released roughly 3 years after the harvest. The alcohol level is at 12 ABV, which is pretty low even for the wines from the Mosel, where alcohol levels get higher and higher for dry Rieslings at least. So this is dry, but 12%, suggesting that it wasn't harvested too late. The nose is quite beautiful. I mean, it has aromas of ripe apples, a little bit of peach as well, a little bit of tangerine flavor coming through too. So it's quite complex and quite beautiful. There's this, you know, sometimes it feels like you can smell the acid, not volatile acidity, but you can feel the freshness, and you certainly get that here in the glass. It smells really, really fresh and vibrant. On the palate, there's lots of concentration, intensity. The acidity is actually not so high. I mean, for a Mosel wine, it actually feels quite brown and rich, even though the alcohol isn't high either. But yeah, there's a lot of concentration and density and richness there. You know, the length is very long and it's really intense, but for me, I mean, this is an amazing wine, but in order to get to 100 points, I would need a little bit more freshness and vibrancy on the palate just to keep it like alive. I think there is a tiny lack of acidity there, in my opinion. You know, this is a delicious, excellent wine, and it sounds a little bit picky of me to say, well, this isn't quite perfect, but yeah, it isn't perfect for me. I would rate this 97 points. I think it's extraordinary, but it's not quite there. There's this X factor missing in the wine that would get me to score it 100 points. Robert Parker once said that a 100-point score is based 90% on the tasting quality of the wine and 10% on pure emotions. So it's not an objective measure. Instead, it's a subjective decision by the taster. But it's still a very good wine. So the next wine is the 2010 Guigal Ex-Voto Ermitage Blanc White Ermitage. And this wine was also rated 100 points by Jeb Dunnock when he was still working for Robert Parker. And he wrote, the utterly perfect 2010 Ermitage Ex-Voto Blanc is as good as it gets in Ermitage Blanc. So yeah, let's find out whether that's true. The Guigal winery was founded in 1946 and Marcel Guigal took over in 1961 when his father suddenly turned blind. And well, they built an amazing winery out of those humble beginnings. They now own several different vineyards and wineries, and they produce some of the best wines coming out of the Rhone. Ermitage is the vineyard of the northern Rhone. It can either be spelled with an HE or an E at the beginning, but it's the same place and it produces some amazing wines. The whites are a little bit more exotic. You don't see them as often, but they can be absolutely delicious. They have to be made from Roussanne and or Marsanne, and they can age really well, and they're deliciously rich and concentrated usually. The fruit for the Ex-Voto Ermitage comes from different plots, l'Ermite and Les Murets, and the wine is only made in special vintages, and it's a blend of 90% Marsanne and 10% Roussanne. The wine is fermented and aged for 30 months in 100% new French oak, and it goes through malolactic conversion. You know, white Ermitage, just like white Châteauneuf-du-Pape, is often a bit underrated. It can be a little bit funky and wild, but those wines can be super interesting and you pay a little bit less, even though, yeah, well, it's all relative. I mean, this bottle isn't cheap by any means, but yeah, it's definitely an experience. Should be. Let's find out whether it is. Whoa, that's a long cork. He catches and he shoots and he scores. What? Let's focus on the wine. Oh my God. I mean, check out this color. It's golden. This is really dark. It's almost like an orange wine color. Wow, this is big, but beautiful. I mean, wow. It smells of honey, chamomile, verbena. There's also a little bit of green apple, bruised apple character coming through. So there's definitely also quite a bit of fruit there. On the palate, it's luscious, rich, and concentrated. There's obviously some alcohol there, but it's 13.5, so it's not a crazy amount of alcohol. The acidity is actually fairly low, but it's still there. There's freshness as well. So it's like a rich and unctuous, dense and concentrated wine. The beauty here is also that it has seen some bottle aging, so it's now 14 years old, which kind of allowed this wine to mature and become a little bit more integrated and harmonious. Check out this color. I mean, this is so golden. It looks like a sweet wine, really. On the palate, there's this touch of toffee. Great wine. Really good wine. I think I would want to drink this a little bit cooler. This is maybe at 15, 16 degrees now. I would chill it down a little bit more to get it to 12 degrees maybe, in order to manage the alcohol a little bit more and bring out a little bit more freshness there. But this is good. I'm not quite there though. I'm going to rate this 99 points. So it's close. It's delicious. Absolutely delicious. But yeah, not quite. So let's go to Austria with the 2016 Torbreck Runrig from Barossa Valley. And Joe Czerwinski wrote, a blend of 98% Shiraz and 2% Viognier made just prior to bottling. The 2016 Runrig is a complete masterpiece, and he rated it 100 points for robertparker.com. Torbreck Winery is still regarded as one of the best in Australia, and this blend of Shiraz and Viognier is actually quite traditional in the northern Rhone. So it kind of adds a little bit of flavor, fruitiness, elegance to the wine, and it can also stabilize the color so that you get a darker color even though you add the white grape variety Viognier. The wine was aged for 30 months in 50% new French oak barrels. So this will be a big, concentrated and rich and maybe even slightly oaky wine. But yeah, let's taste it first. You know, those big concentrated Australian Shirazes are not necessarily modern anymore, but I still like them. And I don't drink them a lot, but if I do, I usually enjoy them. Obviously, they also need to be in balance. So just power is not good enough. You need to have power paired with some elegance, freshness, another dimension. Whoa, this is not see-through. It's dark, very dark. This is a big wine. I mean, this is big. Very big. So it smells of blackberry or blueberry jam. It's quite rich. There's also a little bit of olive tapenade, some dark chocolate flavors coming through as well. So it's just really concentrated, really rich. On the palate, again, there's just so much there. I mean, it's so powerful. The tannins are ripe and round. The alcohol is high. You can definitely feel it. Even though the wine is cool here, it just kind of, you can feel it. So you shouldn't drink this at room temperature. You should put it in the fridge before you serve it in order to make sure that it doesn't become too alcoholic. Because at some point, this is a bit too much. You know, I struggle a bit with this wine. It's just a little bit too much. I mean, like I said in the beginning, if the wine is big, it also needs to be balanced somehow. And this is just big, just really full on, super concentrated, and yeah, I don't see perfection here. It could also be that the Shiraz goes through a phase that isn't really kind of allowing it to express itself fully, but yeah, I think it's just not close to 100 points. That said, I mean, it's a Barossa Valley Shiraz, so it has to be rich and concentrated. But yeah, I just don't think it's a perfect wine. I'm going to rate this 95 points. I think it's delicious. It's a great bottle of wine, but yeah, it just lacks balance. So last but not least, we have the 2004 Vina Tondonia, a winery that was featured a few times already on this channel. Gran Reserva. And Luis Gutierrez wrote for Robert Parker that the 2004 Vina Tondonia Gran Reserva didn't stop growing and changing in the glass for the good 3 hours that lasted the tasting of the portfolio. So yeah, I don't know whether I have 3 hours here, but I hope this will kind of match my expectations, because this is a great winery and it's 20 years old, so it should be in its drinking window. But actually, looking back on the tasting note, it's barely in its drinking window. Luis Gutierrez writes that the drinking dates should be between 2024 and 2044. So well, we're at the beginning of the drinking window here. So this ultra-traditionalist winery was founded in 1877. This was kind of the time when Bordeaux really suffered under phylloxera, and the north of Spain became quite popular for sourcing wines to meet demand in France, while the French wineries weren't really able to produce wine. And this has the reputation of being still very, very traditional. However, this is not a small winery. I mean, the Vina Tondonia vineyard is more than 100 hectares big, so quite big. But that also means that it's widely available, which is nice. And even though the winery has such a high reputation, the wines are still affordable. I mean, like especially the entry-level wines, they are pretty cheap for what they are. The soil of the vineyard is alluvial clay with quite a lot of limestone in it, and they apparently produce 24,000 bottles of this wine. It's a blend of Tempranillo, Garnacha, Mazzuelo, and Graciano, and the wine is aged in well-seasoned American oak. That's what they say. So the wine was aged for 10 years in barrel and then another 10 years in bottle, which kind of makes this the most recent release of the winery, the 2004 vintage. The 2004 vintage, by the way, was rated as outstanding. So Rioja made quite a lot of good wine here. And now let's taste this. Oh, I forgot. Now let's taste this. So yeah, the color is very different to the Shiraz, way less intense, way less dark. But this also goes to show that, I mean, color is not really an indicator of quality. Both wines are very good wines. One is very light, the other one is very dark. So that's more a question of style or character of the grape variety. But this is serious wine. Delicious. So it smells of cherries. There's a little bit of herbal flavor coming through as well. The oak is definitely not very obvious. There's just a little bit of smokiness there. Black tea, there's almost this mintiness there as well. On the palate, it's rich and concentrated. The tannins are ripe and polished. The acidity is also just there. The alcohol is around 13%, so it's not super alcoholic at all. It's really balanced, fresh, lively. Great stuff. It does change quite a bit in the glass. I just picked it up and all of a sudden it had this mushroomy character coming out, more pronounced. This is just a beautiful, beautiful wine. And those Gran Reservas, they often can be a little bit too oaky, too oxidative, and this just isn't that. It is oxidative, but not too much. There's also still bright fruit character coming through. So this is super complex and very, very precise. Okay. I'm going to match robertparker.com here. I think this is beautiful. This is a wine as good as you can make it, especially this is as representative of the region and the style of the house as it can be. It's very complex, very balanced, very long, very intense without being too concentrated. So everything is just there. So here you go. 100 points. I mean, when it comes to 100-point wines, this is also still kind of fairly affordable. Delicious stuff. All right, that's it. What a tasting. 100 points per bottle, 400 points in total. I mean, not by me, but it was close. I mean, those were all delicious wines, absolutely outstanding examples of their types. And those two were just my favorites. The Ex-Voto and the Vina Tondonia, both shown, not necessarily because they were the fruitiest or whatever, the most beautiful wines. They were just kind of the purest, most balanced, most special wines, making me feel kind of special being able to open those bottles. But that said, the other two were also beautiful. I think especially the Serrig, if it is 10 years old, it's probably going to be even more beautiful than it is now. But yeah, great wines. What an experience. And I hope you enjoyed this experience too. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video because I certainly did. If you did, then please like it down here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is, what is your 100-point wine? Let me know down below. Hope I see you guys again very soon. Until then, stay thirsty.